Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. This podcast episode is going to be a smidge late. I apologise. But I'm up and we're getting there. I was away in Thailand last week for the week, which was really lovely. I got to spend some really good quality time with my siblings, who I just adore and love. So that was really special. And it was also nice and warm, but it's really nice to be home as well. And you know what? I think it's really, as a testament, when you can go on any kind of holiday and you can be excited to come home, it really says a lot about the life that you've created in your day-to-day life. And I think that's so important. Creating a life that you're happy to get up to every day, you're happy to be home for all the time, and you can still go away and enjoy yourself, but you can also come home and like, oh, I'm so happy to be home. So that's how I feel at the moment. I'm really tired though. I am catching up on sleep still. We had a nighttime trip home, and then the Friday night went out with my siblings for the night, which was a late night, and it's just been like 2 nights of no sleep, and I'm catching up. And you know, like, I swear, back when you were 20, bounce back like this. It doesn't quite happen like that anymore. And that is okay. So I'm back. Let's go. Today I want to talk about emotions, emotional intelligence, triggers. So how to notice when you're triggered, how to notice when somebody else is triggered in a situation, and how to start dropping into your body and dropping into your own discomfort so that you can process your emotional pain and hurt and trigger. And also just so that you can be aware with curiosity of other people as well, and how to kind of, I guess I'll try to remember to throw this in, how to kind of have conversations with people who are triggered, depending on how they're triggered too, right? But I thought this would be a really cool just topic. It's a big topic. I'm not sure where the conversation is going to take me today. I also don't feel like I'm firing on all cylinders either. So bear with me. We'll see how we go. But let's just start first with a bit of an idea. I'm actually even going to get some paper and I'm going to draw a little something today, just to kind of like anchor in exactly what I'm trying to say. Just because I think this helps. And you can all laugh at my terrible drawings. So, emotions. There's heaps of them. If you haven't looked into them, or you haven't ever thought to look into these, there's a thing called the emotional wheel. You can Google it. It breaks it up into many different sections, and it basically starts with, in the center is the crux of the emotions, and then what each of those emotions, the feelings and the emotions that can be felt from them. So you've got kind of like the main ones are sadness, anger, fear, guilt, shame. They're the main ones, okay? And from those stem a myriad of different other emotions. So for example, you've got like anger is a crux. One thing that comes off anger would be frustration, agitation, just as an example, right? So have a look at the emotional wheel and like start getting familiar with your emotions. You cannot become emotionally intelligent if you don't know them. If you can't pinpoint how you're feeling in any given moment, how can you be emotionally intelligent in certain situations and conversations? It just doesn't happen. And from that, what you start to learn to recognize is the pattern between your emotions and the response, the physiological response your body is having in a moment of a heavy emotion. Crying's a really obvious one, right? Crying's kind of like something that's just been, when I'm super angry or really sad or I feel really inadequate, cry. Some people I know, it's anger, like their go-to response is to snap. Whenever they feel triggered by anything that's really heavy and points the light inwards at them about how they feel about themselves, they will get angry. Some people will just completely shut down. Also a really common one. They'll just be like, I don't know how to process this. I don't know how to feel. I'm like the freeze response almost, right? Like just full shutdown. So have a look at the emotional wheel. I might even try to remember to pop it in the show notes, but you can Google it. It's so easy to find. Start getting familiar with your emotions, right? Sorry, I just had to check I started that. I'm having a shocker today, guys. Start getting familiar with your emotions. And, okay, so that's number one. Get familiar with your emotions. Start to become aware of when people say something to you or certain things happen in your external environment, how it makes you feel, what triggers you. And then you can start pulling the thread to see why it triggers you, okay? And start looking inwards, because it's always within us. Majority of the time, if somebody says something even as a joke and you take that to heart, it's because you've seen truth in their joke. And to become emotionally intelligent and to become so confident in who you are that you don't care about those kind of jokes, that's the goal. Because it's only your perception of yourself and your inner child wounds that allow you to be triggered. And then also, of course, there's people can just say really mean shit and do really mean shit. And naturally, of course, that's going to trigger you and upset you. Not saying that that's not a thing at all, but what I'm trying to more, I guess, communicate in today's episode is about how we can choose how we respond to situations, and to rise above our own stuff so that we're not triggered anymore. Not triggered anymore. We're always probably going to be triggered, right? Because there's always work to do. We're never fully healed. But so that we can become aware of it. So that you don't offload it, you don't bury it, you don't suppress it, you don't repress it. Because the body keeps the score. Any emotions that you're not facing and you're not dealing with, I've spoken about this on another episode before, it gets stored in your body. And that's really toxic and unhealthy, and we don't want that, right? Okay, so I'm going to draw a little thing here. So, right, we always have like an event, right? There's something that happens. Somebody says something happens, someone does something, we do something, we say something, right? So you've got the event up here. Event. From the event, we experience a trigger. It's super messy. Okay? From the event, we become triggered. Now, what most people will do is they will then offload the trigger, okay? They'll send it elsewhere. They're like, I don't want to deal with that. That hurts me. That's really painful. That upsets me. And what will happen is they will get defensive, reactive, and they will put you down to feel better. They are some classic signs of someone being triggered when if you say something, say you're just like trying to let somebody that you care about know that they've upset you, right? You've just been like, hey, look, I didn't really like how you said that about me. It wasn't very nice and I would like you to not do it again, right? So you've brought up something, a genuine feeling where you feel hurt. That triggers them. And instead of them dropping into the discomfort of perhaps the guilt that they made you feel like that, super simple, not hard to say sorry. Instead of dropping into their own discomfort, they offload it back onto you. So they'll get defensive, reactive. They'll put you down to feel better. They might gaslight your feeling, right? It'll be something like, oh, stop being such a baby, or I think you're being too sensitive. Why are you being so much? Oh my God, like, do we have to do this again? Right? That's some of the reactions that you might get because instead of them sitting in the discomfort of them perhaps just, acknowledging that they've upset you, instead it makes them feel inadequate for whatever reason, right? It's their own stuff. They've been carrying it forever. This is not a reflection of you at all. This is their shit. Instead of them dropping into their discomfort, they fire it back off at you. And I guarantee you that everyone, I hope this is showing up even the right bloody way. If it's not, I will draw it and I will take a picture of this and attach it. You know how sometimes it mirrors and it's backwards? Hopefully that's not the case here. But so it's never about you, it's always about the person, okay? If you've genuinely gone to somebody to express something that they've done that's hurt you, which is already incredibly hard to do, by the way, for, you know, a lot of people, and that gets offloaded back onto you, it's not about you, that's about their own woundings, but it does mean that there can't be a repair of the situation. And maybe you've been in a relationship with somebody who's like this. And I bet over time, you started to realize that no matter what you say or what you bring up, you can't fully be heard, you can't fully be seen, you can't fully be held, because everything that you bring to them gets thrown back at you, which is them never taking accountability, responsibility, or ownership for how they make you feel or the actions that they do that impact you in a negative way. And so you slowly just stop bringing things up. You stop letting them know when they've hurt you. You stop asking for, you know, a higher standard. You stop setting boundaries because you know it's like there's no use to it. And so over time, you'll start to resent that person. There will never be repair, and the relationship will just slowly get worse and worse and worse until you've become a shell of a person because you weren't able to be seen and heard in your pain, and so you just slowly suppress it and repress it over time more and more and more till that you just don't bring anything up anymore, and you probably don't even know how you feel except the fact that you feel empty and like you're stuck in a rut. And I will say to this, whilst yes, that is so easy to fall into that trap, I've been there in relationships where this was happening, and look, I'm not someone who ever stays in them for long. Like, I think, 2 years is kind of like, I'll put up with, I'll like 2 years is kind of my longest relationship anyway, 2.5. But it's always at about the 2 year mark that you start to really see someone for who they are. And for me personally, I only ever last about 6 months in like, okay, this is happening and I'm very much aware of it before I will. It's either like, if you can't meet me where I'm at and start working through your stuff so that we can have a better relationship, then I'm out. And so I'll just leave. I know that's not the case for a lot of people. A lot of people will stay somewhere where it's really painful and they don't have their boundaries. They can't set boundaries for how they're treated. They do get put down all the time and they can't, like, they lose themselves so hard in relationships. So I just want to, I guess, preface that I know it's hard, and also the only person's responsibility for how long you stay in this kind of in a dynamic where you can never be heard is your choice. It really is. You're the only person who can leave. You're the only person who can take accountability and ownership of how they feel in any given situation, in any given environment, in any given relationship, and you always have the power and the choice to leave. That power and that choice is going to have very different roads for every single person. Okay, so I'm not saying that, your situation is going to be super easy to just walk away. I get that that's not the case in a lot of situations, but people in probably worse situations have done it before. So yeah, if you're in any kind of a relationship, whether it's an intimate one, a friendship, a working relationship, a family relationship dynamic where this is happening, where you bring something up, they feel triggered, they don't sit in that discomfort, instead they offload it straight back onto you. Like, you take a look in the mirror, this is you too, this is not just me. Like, if it was you too, then why didn't they bring it to you, right? Why didn't they bring it to you first? But because you've brought it to them, it's triggered, then they offload it straight away. So that's how to kind of like, I guess, become aware of somebody else doing it too. Basically, there is no, I'm so sorry that I made you feel that way. It was never my intention to hurt you. And I promise you that going forwards, I am going to work on that. And I'm going to make an effort to not do something that's going to cause you to feel that way. It's that hurts me that I did that. That's how you repair it. That's how someone brings something to you, and because you've upset them, that's how you repair it. That's how you repair it. Because at the end of the day, we can disagree, right? We can be like, oh shit, like I didn't even realize that me doing that would have had that impact or that effect. But it's not up to you to minimize their emotions. Like, they felt it the way they felt it. Okay? Just because you might not have felt that way doesn't mean it's not their reality. And vice versa. If you take something to somebody else and they don't repair, right? They can't even try and understand or appreciate where you're coming from, then they're uncomfortable. At the end of the day, they're uncomfortable. But this is how we improve our relationships. We have to be able to validate and acknowledge the other person. We have to be able to get out of our own head, get out of our own way, and look at the other person and really just feel some compassion, try put their hat on, try put your feet in their shoes just for that moment, to be able to reach even a level of compassion for how they might be feeling, for them to have brought it up to you. This is how you can start to tap into being able to repair your relationships whenever there's a moment that needs repair. And this is a process, right? Because it's so easy. Unless you grew up with an incredibly emotionally intelligent parents or you were surrounded by adults who were emotionally intelligent, this whole sitting in the discomfort thing is going to be very, very foreign to you, incredibly foreign to you. It was foreign to me when I learned all of this, for sure, but this is how now I can have harder conversations with people and I can actually start to stand up for myself as well. But, one thing I'll say is, like, even just in dating, the last few guys that I've had a connection with have all said similar things to me. And it's been along the lines of, like, thank you for showing me what a mature dialogue looks like. Thank you for being so understanding. Like, I've made them feel really valued, appreciated, and seen. And I've been able to have hard conversations where, for whatever reason, they're not choosing me. And whilst, of course, that is painful and can hurt, it's not like that's about them, right? That's their stuff to work through. And you're never going to always meet people that just align with you straight away. That's like, yep, this is the perfect happy ending, let's go, right? But it's how you show up when shit's not going the way that you would hoped, or when shit's not going the way that you would really like it to go. That's how you sit in the discomfort and you can still respond in a way that's mature, that holds space, that acknowledges the other person and validates the other person, even if it's not what you want to hear. So this work is so incredibly powerful, and it's not to say that you don't get to have the feelings that you feel in a moment anymore. Of course you do. You just go and process them in a space that's actually applicable to do so, right? So learning to just be aware of when you're triggered, okay? Because, for example, that example that I just gave, right? In dating. So anyone who dates and you pour in, you like the other person, right? You genuinely like the other person. But for whatever reason, they're not choosing you because of whatever it is, right? I could rattle off a bunch of things, but every single situation is going to have different things, okay? So that is a sad moment when you're really wanting a relationship and you're really wanting to settle down, you're really wanting to build that family. Of course, each time that you date somebody and it doesn't come to fruition, it's hard, it's sad because, like I've talked about on this before, I do show up like very much everything. I show up I show up being as kind, as authentic, as playful, as like me as possible without the guards, without the past hurt. So I'm really, consciously giving as much as I can when I'm dating. And so when it doesn't come to fruition for whatever reason, like that is really sad. It's like, shit, okay. And I could easily be triggered in that moment. And I bet if you have dated I bet you've experienced this where you've dated someone and maybe you haven't wanted to continue to be with them. And then what happens? They got reactive, they got defensive. They put you down to make themselves feel better in that moment because all you did was shine a light. All you did was say, hey, look, this is not really for me. I think you're a great person, but I don't see this going anywhere. That's so fine. There should be a thing that we can say to somebody else that, because we wouldn't want to lead somebody on and take them, lead them down a path of like, it looks like you're interested, but then all of a sudden, but you're not. Like, that's worse. In my opinion, that is fucking worse. Don't lead people on. Don't ghost people. Like, just show up with some courtesy that you're dealing with another human, please. Oh my God. Don't kick the can down the road and lead somebody on because you're too scared to have the conversation or because you're like, well, what if it works out? Listen to your intuition. Like, let that person know so that they can go and find their person. Like, you're holding them back from their future whilst also holding yourself back from yours. Oh, this grinds my gears. I could talk about this for ages. It makes me angry. This makes me angry when people do that because it's not nice to be on the receiving end of that either. Like, it can be really frustrating to be on the receiving end of that. But anyways, like, okay, so when have you ever been dating somebody and you've like basically realized they're not for you, they're a great person, but for whatever reason, there's just like, it's just not aligned for you. And so you do the courteous thing and you let them down. You like, just like, hey, look, and even if I've gone on dates where it was like just one date, I will always after it, if I'm not interested, be like, hey, it was really nice to meet you, but I actually don't think that we're really fully aligned for where I'm looking for. I wish you all the best. I've done that. Every single person I've ever dated that I haven't wanted to pursue things with. And I can tell you, I have received backlash heavily for that. And I've said it just exactly like that. They have got so reactive, yelled, swore, put me down just to make themselves feel better in that moment. For me personally, that is like the absolute best sign that you made the right decision because, like, well, all right, true colours coming out really hard and fast there, bud. Yeah, so I just said bud because I think that applies to somebody like that. I've only recently learnt this year that bud and buddy is like highly offensive to people in Australia. I don't know how I didn't know this before. Champ as well, really bad apparently. Anyways, so yeah, it highlights how much of a bullet you just dodged, in my opinion, when somebody reacts to you being kind and courteous and letting them down and not leading them on. And at the end of the day, that's just them not being able to sit in their discomfort. So now if it happens to me, I never want to be that person who acts like an absolute twat because I haven't been chosen, right? That's not cool. That is not cool. even after 2 years with someone who had said that they were definitely, open to having another child, and then after 2 years were like, nope, don't want to have another one. I still didn't be the twat. I didn't do the twat response, right? Was I sad? Fuck, I was sad. I was incredibly sad. But at the end of the day, I can't change somebody else. I'm not here to change somebody else. We should all just want to be with somebody who wants to choose us for who we are, make whatever it is work, overcome the obstacles, because it's like, my life with you is going to be richer and so much more fulfilled, and I don't want to wait for somebody else, right? That's what we want. We want that person to be choosing us as much as we're choosing them. And so if I'm not getting chosen, or the goalposts have shifted and they really seriously don't align, you're allowed to choose what's right for you in the moment, and you're allowed to walk away. It's better than, again, committing to something that you're actually not wanting, and then in 10 years' time being like, I wish I never did that. Like, that's horrible. To be on the receiving end of that is also horrible. I have also experienced that. Not a good time. So I feel like I went off on a tangent there, but how can we learn to sit in the trigger? Let's talk about that. How can you learn to be triggered in a moment and actually get to a point where you can respond rather than react or shut down or avoid it? So the first thing I'll say is it's learning to become aware of what your body's doing, because a lot of the time you're going to have the physiological reaction of the trigger before you have any idea of what emotion's happening, what thoughts are happening. None of that's going to come up first. It's just going to be, I feel sick about that. I feel sad about that. I feel angry about that. You might tense your hands, you might get the racing heart, the pain in the chest, nauseous stomach, tight throat usually means that you have something to say but you're too scared to say it. You might clench your jaw, right? Our body's usually always going to react first before our brain our consciousness has any idea of what the thoughts and the emotions actually are happening in the moment. It's just that something within you that has been living in you for probably a very long time has just been triggered, and so you always have the same reaction. More than likely you react the same way all the time, or very, very consistently. So it's actually, I'd sit down now and just do a bit of a stock take on, when has somebody said something to you or done something to you that was really hurtful, and what did you do? That's going to start to be able to lead you so that you can kind of like backtrack into, that's what happened, that was my reaction, because this is what I felt, because this is the story I make up about myself when that happens. How do I heal that? All right, a lot of the time it's going to be a lot of inner child work, okay? And the hard part is actually being able to get to a point where you can control not reacting, where you can just go, you can notice that it's about to happen before it happens, right? But now that I've said this and you become aware of it, just start to notice this in your day-to-day life. You're not going to get it right every time. You're not going to get it right first go. Like, please have some compassion and kindness for yourself to move through this. This is not easy work. It's incredibly difficult. Like I said, unless you grow up with incredibly emotionally intelligent parents, you're going to be absolutely learning this on day one when you listen to it right now. So just know that it's going to take you time to not just react, and to be able to get to a point where you can be aware of what's happening within your body. You can be aware of what the thoughts are that you're having. You can talk yourself down from those. You can reframe them in the moment, and then you can respond. Like, it takes so much time to get to a point where you can do that in any way, shape or form at speed. So please have kindness and compassion for yourself that you're going to work on this, and be kind to yourself when you don't get it right. Because the fact that you're aware of it and you're working on it, and if you can acknowledge it, even if you have the trigger and you do react, but in an hour's time, you can go and cool down and you can come back to that person and be like, I realize I just did that again. And I'm really sorry. And I'm actually working on it. I promise you I'm working on that because I don't want to react like that anymore. I want to be able to respond to you because I know that what you're asking me is not bad. I know that it's not too big. I know that it's not unreasonable. I'm working on it. Like, can you imagine how good it would feel if you had people come to you and be able to say this to you after they've reacted towards you and actually see them do the work, actually see them apply what they're saying instead of, because you will get people who say that all the time. The narcissists, right? People with narcissistic behaviors, people who gaslight, they will say this to you. They'll be very good at this. I'm working on it. I'm so sorry I did that to you. They will like love bomb you. But if the behavior continues happening over and over and over and over and over again, and they're not actually doing any kind of work other than saying that they are, right? If they're not going to a psychologist, they're not going to a coach, they're not going to therapy, they're not putting themselves in uncomfortable situations where they're having to get, exposure to being triggered to then work through that, they're not doing the work. They're just telling you bullshit so that you stay, so that it makes them feel better, so it makes them feel like they're doing the work. And then so when you turn around and say, well, actually, I'm not seeing that happen, they can be like, I've been telling you I've been doing the work, right? Use discernment here. You will know when somebody's actually doing the work because shit will change, their actions will change for the long term. They won't continually repeat the same painful behaviours and cycles towards you and tell you they're trying to change. Two very different people, okay? Actions will always show you. It will stop happening. If they're actually doing the work, it will actually stop happening, okay? Or it will happen in random different ways where it's like something very new that can trigger them and they know that's fine. But if it's the same stuff, similar over and over and over again, they're not doing the work. You can leave. You can walk away, okay? Okay, so just start having kindness and compassion for yourself that you're not going to get this right every time. Process is you're going to experience the trigger, you will react, but now you're going to have awareness of the reaction. So the work is for you, 100% get a coach, get a therapist, get a psychologist, whatever it is that you prefer to go to work through this, because you do need someone who can hold you through this, to highlight to you where you're being triggered, to ask you the right questions so that you can dig deep, because you're going to try to avoid the painful stuff that causes you to have the trigger in the first place. That's just us as humans. It's what we do. Unless you're incredibly, incredibly self-aware, you will not be able to necessarily see exactly what it is because it might be too painful, all right? But you need somebody who can hold space for you, who's not going to react towards your big reactions or your pain or your hurt or your inadequacies or your shame or your guilt, who can hold space for you in that moment and who can show you how to be there for yourself, all right? So I highly recommend that. Being aware of the trigger and then just noticing that you're really freaking uncomfortable. Like, sit in that discomfort of like, oh, that's really sad. Oh, I feel kind of sick about that. This feels really awkward. What do I do? That made me really angry. I can't believe they just said that about me. All right, just start noticing how you feel. What are the thoughts going through your head? Where are you feeling it in your body? And then just breathe into that. Like, find where you're feeling it. Just breathe. Remind yourself that it's not about you. Whatever is happening, it's coming from them. All right? Like, or if it is about something that you've done, just sit in that and be like, fuck, I'm really sorry. Like, And then once you've done the repair, like go and sit with yourself and be like, why did that trigger me so much? Like, why did that make me feel so inadequate? And then, because like, so inadequacy is a big one, because inadequacy can stem from shame and guilt, which are two really, really big things. And I think a lot of us as humans just feel inadequate every single day in some way, shape, or form. Like, we feel like we're not being a good enough mum. Feel like we're not being a good enough dad. We feel like we're not being a good enough friend. We feel like we're not being a good enough worker. We feel like we're not being a good enough, we're not being good enough at eating well, at exercising, at, making time for ourselves, at meeting our commitments, all of the stuff. We can constantly put ourselves down because there's so much comparison out there. So inadequacy can be a big one. And depending what you grew up with, if you were abandoned by a parent, you're going to feel like you're just not enough. It's a massive inadequacy wound. If you had a really hard childhood and you had, really horrible things happen to you, you're going to feel like you're not enough. There's going to be there's a lot there when it comes with inadequacy that's going to stem from your childhood. So just take a look at it. Like, it's going to, the obstacle is the way. The only way to get past your stuff is to go through it. So yeah, inadequacy is going to give you, I guarantee you, every time that you feel upset by something that's happened, it's probably tapped into an inadequacy wound. Not like 100% of the times, but what I've noticed, it's quite common. It's quite popular for that to be where it stems from. So how do you overcome that? What do you need to look at and start changing your thoughts and belief systems around so that you are no longer a victim to that inadequacy wound, so that you are no longer a victim to that belief system, and instead you can overcome it and you can become the one in control of it. It doesn't have control of you anymore, right? And I'm brushing over this. Like, this shit takes a lot of work, years. It takes years to learn this stuff. So I am brushing over it. I'm trying to squish it into a 30-minute podcast, which doesn't do it justice whatsoever. But the work is to be able to sit in your discomfort and to respond even from that place of discomfort, because you're not being caught up in your own stuff that's going to lead you to reacting, and instead you're sitting in the discomfort of it. You can completely just like drop into the other person and be like, okay, I'm really sorry that you feel that way. And you can just understand and appreciate that that's where they're at. It doesn't mean anything about you. When you can get to that point, you're going to be able to have much healthier conversations and harder conversations, because you can be aware of being triggered, but you can also in the moment talk yourself through it to a point where it's like, yeah, this isn't about me, or it's interesting, how interesting that I'm having that thought. How interesting that they just said that to me and it made me think about that. Like, just bring so much curiosity into your own brain, into your own body, and then also give them that benefit of curiosity as well. How interesting that they said that. I wonder, like, you can also, you can acknowledge and take accountability for when you've hurt somebody 100%. And I think it would be really good if we could get to a point where we could just acknowledge that we've done it before we even need them to say anything. But that's not always the case. But yeah, it'd be great if, so just get to the point where you can acknowledge your own, like, you can take accountability for your part in it, and then also go one level deeper and be curious about them. I wonder why they do that. I wonder why they think that. I wonder where that comes from. Have a look at the emotional wheel. What emotion are they showing? Which one does it stem to in the center? And if you have a good relationship with somebody where you can talk about this stuff, which is the goal, by the way, then you can ask them, like, hey, I just noticed that, that seemed to like really make you agitated or frustrated or make you really sad. Like, where do you think that comes from? Like, what's your first memory of that? Man, the amount of things you'll get to know about each other when you can have those conversations is beautiful. And so many humans, we're so afraid of this stuff. We're afraid of our emotions. We avoid them like the plague, but it's not the way. You want to have better relationships in every aspect of your life. You need to master your emotions. You need to master your emotions. You need to become aware of them, learn about them, be able to talk about them. Lots of people can't even talk about their emotions. Be able to say the hard stuff, right? And I'll tell you now how incredibly healing it is when you can have a hard conversation with someone and they don't react. And I think that's, yes, I am a coach, so I do this for a living anyway. But when I can do this in my personal life and I can hear hard things and I can give that person the gift of being heard and appreciated in what they've said, even though it hurts me, I think that's pretty special. And I will continue to endeavour to do that, because that's how we all should be able to handle these conversations. And we should all be able to have our own feelings and our own emotions, our own preferences and our own desires without it being attacked. And especially if you're able to say it, and it's a hard thing to say, you should be able to do that in a safe space. I think that's the goal. How long have we been going for, guys? Let's have a little look. 41 minutes. Time for me to shush. Okay, I am going to wrap it up there because this is a big topic and it can go on for ages, but I think that I rounded that out quite well. I think I covered a good amount of things. I think that you guys will get some good takeaways from this. And yeah, emotional mastery, emotional intelligence. Start learning your emotions. Start being aware of your reactions. Start being aware of how your body feels in certain moments. And start learning how to master them and overcome them so that you don't continually be triggered by the same stuff. And so that you can have hard conversations and healthy conversations. And I can assure you that it's not so scary after a while. It's like anything, we're continually learning how to do new things, and this is a new thing. And one day you can master it if you commit to learning it. So let's all become emotionally intelligent humans. All right, have a beautiful Wednesday. Bye.